Wieliczka is home to one of the world's most important mines that was open for 7 centuries straight. Imagine a town that only came to be in order to house miners that worked in Central Europe's most productive mine. Well, this is exactly what happened in the town of Wieliczka, located right on the outskirts of Kraków. And yeah, I understand that a salt mine might not be too appealing at first sight, but this is a different type of mine. More than a damp and dark mine, it is a wonderful museum that shows you how life was for a miner and the importance salt had for southern Poland. Plus, you can even experience a tour of the mine as a miner if you choose to do so, or learn about the health benefits of visiting this particular mine. Wieliczka salt mine is located in the historic town of Wieliczka, only 13 kilometers or 8.1 miles to the southeast of Kraków. Getting to a salt mine is not complicated at all, since it is well connected to the city of Kraków. Driving from Kraków Old Town, it takes about 20 minutes to reach Wieliczka, but depending on how bad traffic is, it could take up to 35 minutes. The other option is to take public transportation, since there is an express train line that goes from Kraków Główny, Krakow's main station in English, to Wieliczka Salt Mine train station. Train line SKA1 further branches off to Kraków Airport, so technically you can fly into Kraków and then head directly to the mine if you so desire to. The train ride from Kraków Główny to the mine takes exactly 20 minutes and runs from 4:30 a.m. to 12 a.m. Its tickets cost 7 zloty or $1.91 for rides between Kraków main station and Wieliczka salt mine station. If you were to take the train all the way to the airport, then the price would increase. I went more in depth about this in this video. Alternatively, there is a bus route that also connects Kraków Główny and Wieliczka salt mine. Bus route 304 departs from the bus stop outside of Kraków Główny and arrives to a salt mine bus stop in about 35 minutes. Although it is not the most popular option, it is a tiny bit cheaper at 6 zloty or $1.65 per ticket, and is definitely more accessible as it stops closer to the salt mine than the train does. Wieliczka salt mine was one of the first salt mines opened in Poland, only second to a nearby historic Bochnia salt mine. Throughout many centuries, Central Europe depended upon the salt deposits found around the region. Generations upon generations depended on the salt as a means of payment and income, especially in southern Poland. However, it wasn't until the 13th century that the first underground lumps of rock salt were accidentally found. The discovery of the valuable raw material turned out to be revolutionary. It made it possible to obtain salt by mining methods, which led to the first mine shafts being opened in the second half of the 13th century. The development of mines like the one in Wieliczka allowed Poland to become a powerhouse during the Middle Ages, especially under Casimir III the Great. In Polish history, Casimir III is considered one of the greatest Polish rulers to the extent that he is the only king to be given the moniker Great by his own descendants. It is said about him that he founded Poland made of wood and left it made of stone. Nevertheless, rare mention is ever given to the importance the revenue from the salt extraction had for the kingdom, which then constituted as much as a third of the royal treasurer's income. The relevance of the mine only increased in the following centuries, to the point that it became one of the most productive mines in the world. Eventually, the mine grew to 9 levels and a maximum depth of 327 meters to deal with the massive production quota it had accumulated throughout the centuries. Although Wieliczka salt mine's economic and mining importance is undeniable, there is one bigger reason why this mine is so well known: tourism. It is believed that by the late 1400s, Wieliczka had already gained fame, and the first visitors descended to the underground shafts. Yet, the very first tourist whom we know by name is Nicholas Copernicus, who probably visited the mine in 1493. In remembrance of this event, a monumental salt figure of the brilliant astronomer was set up in the chamber named after him, which can be appreciated when walking the tourist route of the mine. By the 18th century, the mine was already a prime tourist destination and widely known by many as a must-do around Kraków. However, during that time, the only way to enter the mine for recreational purposes was to get a personal royal permit, a measure that you must imagine limited its visitors to prominent and powerful figures. Nonetheless, the number of tourists grew steadily, and mentions of Wieliczka appeared more and more frequently in European literature. Plus, the presence of eminent scientists, travelers, and diplomats made the Wieliczka salt mine a unique place. After the partitions of Poland, the mine fell under the control of the Habsburg family. The Austrians further developed Wieliczka and its mine into the largest production hub of the region. The new administrators of the mine saw its appeal to the masses and were able to slowly open up the mine to everyone. During this period, tourism became an important source of income for the owners, who saw the importance of further investing in this branch of the mine. Various new services started to be offered that rivaled present-day amusement parks. By 1868, The tour of the mine included breathtaking attractions, and guests could be toured by horse-drawn railway in some parts. Its most famous attractions were the Devil's Drop, where the miners would descend into the mine using a rope, boat rides on the Saving Lake, which was illuminated with torches, the presence of a mining orchestra, which would play for the visitors during every tour, and, of course, fireworks shows. These changes, as you might imagine, only increased the popularity of the mine and drove even more tourism toward it. As an idea, in the 18th century, the mine would see several dozens of visitors a month. At the beginning of the 20th century, the number of visitors had reached as high as 100 people a week. The tourists included people from all walks of life, from the wealthiest of nobility to the most common folk. Still, its most important visitors were the many Poles that would come from all corners of the three partitions. For them, the mine represented the largest enterprise of the former Commonwealth. It was a symbol and monument of the former glory of the Polish nation that was taken away from them. Wieliczka salt mine was visited to fortify hearts, and the visit was a kind of political manifestation, a patriotic act, and a testimony of attachment to national values. After the end of World War I, Poland regained its independence, and the mine once again came under Polish administration. It was a long-awaited moment for which the inhabitants of Wieliczka and miners working underground had waited for about 150 years. The names of the shafts and excavations were symbolically changed to more meaningful ones to the Polish people. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, the mine and the tourism industry it had created continued expanding in spite of World War II being thrown in the mix. Salt production reached its maximum in the 1970s, and tourist traffic was becoming more and more important. By the time it was included on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1978, the awareness of the cultural significance of the site was growing, and the historic mine started to be seen as a priceless monument that required special care and protection. The idea that preserving the mine for future generations could be a task of much greater importance than industrial salt production and current profits was slowly taking root. In addition, the mine was on the list of World Heritage in danger from 1989 to 1998. This was due to the threat of serious damage being done to the sculptures from humidity caused by artificial ventilation introduced in the late 19th century. Therefore, in 1996, a decision was made to end industrial salt production in Wieliczka. Today, the Underground Museum is visited every year by nearly 2 million people from all over the world. Even politicians, crowned heads of state, and members of royal families include the mine in their official visits to Kraków in Poland. There are two tour options to visit the salt mine, the tourist route and the miner's route. The tourist route follows this path, while the miner's route follows this path. Personally, I have only taken the tourist route, which is a literally walk around through the mine, similar to a museum visit but with a guide dictating the pace of your visit. This route is longer, meaning there will be considerably more walking than the other route. Despite that, the tourist route goes through or stops at the mine's most important attractions. This route is available in Polish, English, German, French, Spanish, Italian, and Russian at these specific times. The miner's route is a more interactive tour of the mine, but shorter. From what I have heard, this route is very hit and miss. Many people really enjoy how engaging it is, while others find it too boring. For this route, visitors will change into miners' outfits and explore the mine with a guide that shows you how miners used to work in the mine. The miner's route is only available in Polish and English, with the English tours occurring at 10:15 a.m. and 2:15 p.m. Which one is the best out of the two? Well, it really depends on what you prefer. Do you like museum visits, learn about history, and don't mind walking? Then probably the tourist route is best for you. Whereas if you enjoy dressing up, having a more hands-on experience, and want to experience life as a miner for a couple hours, then the miner's route should be your choice. Both tickets cost 143 zloty, or $39.01 per adult, or 121 zloty, or $33.01 for children, students, or senior tickets. You can visit the Wieliczka salt mine from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on every single day except for New Year's Day, Easter Sunday, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day. At last, but definitely not least, there is one more thing to do at the mine. The graduation tower is a separate attraction from the mine system that can only be accessed by buying its own ticket that costs 10 zloty or $2.73 per person. This links perfectly to the health benefits that a trip to Wieliczka salt mine is often attributed with. According to the mine's website and to many of its visitors, the graduation tower provides health benefits primarily for respiration and skin issues. It achieves this by creating a unique microclimate with a saline aerosol that is said to help people suffering of chronic respiratory diseases. Breathing in the salt-laden air helps cleanse the respiratory tract, reduce inflammation, and may have anti-allergic properties, similar to that of air from the ocean or the sea. Even though I am the first one to not believe in any form of pseudomedicine, there is some reasoning behind it. I mean, most of us have been prescribed saline solution or saline mist to clear nasal congestion at some point. Thus, this is the reason why many visitors go to the mine for its healing qualities and to exert some health tourism. There are many accounts of people visiting Wieliczka salt mine or other salt mines around the world that have felt a relief from the respiratory conditions after touring those places. I have to admit it, I am one of those people. To be clear, not the ones to do health tourism. I believe that is weird. However, despite not liking to accept it, I have to believe that there is some truth to those claims. I promise that I entered the mine with a terrible stuffy nose and cold-like symptoms. But I left the mine being able to breathe like I have never had been able to do before. I didn't realize this until someone pointed out that I had no signs of ever having a cold later that day. Call it coincidence or not, but hey, it might just be true. Wieliczka is a small town that most people often never even learn about in their lifetimes. Nevertheless, it holds one of the most important mines in world history that is now a prime tourist attraction. Not many places on earth can brag about receiving over 1 million visitors and allegedly have health benefits as well. Regardless of how many accolades Wieliczka salt mine has, the best thing about it is its beauty. Few museums have such stunning sights like this mine, and such massively rich a history. Hopefully, you'll give it a chance when you visit Krakow. I am sure you won't regret it. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing and leaving a like. God bless you and have a great day.